We've done unpromoted classes, we've done promoted classes, but I'm not done milking this concept yet. So this time I'm going to answer the question, what is the strongest monster class in the Sacred Stones? And maybe the spider from chapter 6 will finally get to kill a child. The basic premise is the same. I'll be taking the 10 promoted monster classes in FE8 and making them fight each other class to rank them by the number of wins. Same as the last tournament, they will face each class twice, once attacking first and again attacking second, with a half a point awarded for each win. So if you win attacking first and second, you get a full point. If you only win one of the battles, you get half a point, and if you lose both times, you get 0 points for that matchup. Not including the Demon King, as it is a unique class, and in these tournaments we only use the generic classes. We are left with 10 classes to put against each other and a maximum score of 9 points available to each class from the 9 matchups. Make sure you comment your predictions down below. I'm curious to see how close you guys will actually get. Everything else in the tournament is the same as last time. All the units are level 20 promoted, with each weapon type they can wield in their inventory. In the promoted tournament, this mainly just meant silver weapons, but a lot of these classes don't have normal weapon ranks. They instead use monster weapons, which don't have a rank at all. But the monster weapons they have access to do almost have a silver level equivalent. If we look at the Gwilgi as an example, which is kind of modelled on a sword master, he has a normal fiery fang with 5 might, which is the same as an iron sword, and the other monster weapon they can have is the hell fang with a might of 13, which is the same as a silver sword, and this mostly translates across the other monster weapons. So for this tournament, I just gave the monster weapon classes the silver equivalent weapon they would have access to. For the Entombed, that was the Fetid Claw. For the Archmogul, it was a Crimson Eye. The Gorgon got a Demon Surge. The Gwilgi got a Hellfang, and the Elder Bale got a Sharp Claw. And now, after a few hours of fighting, we have the combat rankings for every monster class, and in the 10th position, we have the Entombed with a score of 0. He lost every single match he had. As I mentioned, there are 10 classes, so the score will be out of a maximum of 9, and 0 out of 9 is just embarrassing. The Entombed really don't have much going on in the stats department, aside from decent strength and weirdly luck alongside a massive HP pool, so they really didn't have much hope in any of these matchups. In the vanilla game, I think they have a better showing. There's a couple of early game promoted Entombed enemies, some with lethal talons, and they can pack a bit of a punch. I honestly love Entombed in the vanilla game because they are hard-coded to give a buttload of XP, so there's a genuine case for letting Seth kill the Entombed boss of chapter 4, because despite his reduced XP gain on account of his high level, he still gets 100 XP from killing him, so it's kind of the most efficient XP allocation you can get from this boss. But in the context of this tournament, they really do suck. It's honestly kind of depressing watching them fail over and over again, so let's just move on to the next position. Next we have the White, but the version that uses bows. Some people might not know, but there are 2 completely different classes in the game, both whites, but one has a bow rank and the other has a rank for swords and lances, but they are separate from each other. The bow version got an incredible score of 2 whole points out of the 9 available. He beat the Entombed going first and second, which is true of literally every class, and he also got half a point against the Mogul and Deathgoyle, but he lost to them going second. Every other battle he went into, he lost. His stats weren't good enough to do any better. Most stats are okay, and the skill is fairly high, but his unimpressive stats across the board really didn't pose much of a threat to most of the enemies he went up against. The melee version of the White that uses swords and lances had a slightly better score of 3 points, which was tied for 7th place with the Archmogul that also got 3 points. Getting swords and lances doesn't really make a ton of difference. Maybe it gave a slight edge in some matches through greater control of the weapon triangle, but it does miss out on effective damage against the Deathgoyle, who the bow White got half a point against. There are also small differences in the stat lines between the classes, but whatever the exact factors were, the melee version did score a bit better. The melee White won both matches against the Entombed, as well as both matches against the bow White and the Archmogul, but lost every other battle, so that got it a total of 3 points, which was tied by the Archmogul, getting the same number of points scattered around its matchups. Both fights against the Entombed were a win, but then it also won going first against the bow White, Bale, Melduin, and Cyclops. It wasn't able to win going second against any of these enemies, and it only beat the Cyclops going first because the Mogul got a crit that killed in one shot, which I really did enjoy. That was a cool moment. The Mogul is a very heavy hitting class with a magic stat of 20, which is amazing. Its other stats really let it down though, especially the 5 defense and 28 HP, which make it very fragile, and the low speed meant it got doubled by the vast majority of the other classes. These stats generally meant that it could kill in 2 hits, but it also died in 2 hits, so it mostly came down to who attacked first in the even matchups, and against stronger classes it was just too squishy to have much hope. In the actual game there are quite a lot of somewhat scary archmoguls, but that is mainly just the ones that have the siege weapon Shadow Shot, which can do very high damage from range, but in a vacuum it just couldn't perform well in the tournament setting due to its extreme squishiness. We then have another tie for 5th place between the Melduin and the Deathgoyle, who both got 5 points apiece. The Melduin won both battles against the Entombed and the White classes, as well as against the Deathgoyle, where the effective damage from bows made it a good matchup for the Melduin. The more interesting matches to me were going against the Archmogul and the Gwilgi, as it only got half a point against each of these enemies. The Melduin doubled the Mogul, and going first he one-rounded. Going second though, he took a hit, and then on his turn he got killed on counter before he could double, so he lost half a point there. Against the Gwilgi, however, it was the Melduin that was getting doubled. He did kill in 2 hits, but with very shaky hit rates, so attacking first he got unlucky and missed, resulting in a loss, but when he attacked second he got better luck and hit both of his attacks, so he managed to scrape the win. The Deathgoyle also got 5 points, and I honestly think it's impressive that he got as many points as the Melduin, since the Deathgoyle has only got access to a single weapon and takes effective damage from bows, which really held it back against the bow classes, and even with those disadvantages it still managed to bag a bunch of wins. Their stats are pretty fantastic, having very high strength at 20 and solid speed and defense, which I would argue are the best 3 stats to have, and there's definitely some points in the vanilla game where Deathgoyles or even their unpromoted forms can be tricky to handle. The Deathgoyle boss of the Phantom Ship map is pretty terrifying. On hard mode he takes a lot of firepower to take down, and he wields a spear which can come close to one-shotting a lot of your squishier units, and his flying means it's hard to block him off from your weaker units to avoid him killing them. That map in general is probably the hardest in Sacred Stones, and I think the Gargoyles and especially the boss Deathgoyle are a big part of why it's so challenging. So the class definitely makes a pretty strong impression in the base game, and I'm glad that they had a pretty good showing in this tournament as well. We then have a final tie for 3rd place between the Gorgon and the Gwilgi, who both got 6 points each. The Gorgon is a glass cannon that hits like a truck with their 24 magic, but they are slightly on the squishy side with 8 defense and 32 HP. They have a very similar stat spread to the Archmogul, but they just have better stats across the board, meaning that there were only 2 classes they didn't score against, being the Deathgoyle and the Cyclops, and only 2 classes that took half a point away from it, being the Gwilgi and the Bale, which both won when the Gorgon attacked second. Most of these losses came from the enemies having huge HP pools, or by the enemies being too quick for them, so the Gorgon got doubled like with the Deathgoyle. Every other matchup, however, was a straight win for the Gorgon. Gorgons do hit very hard, which makes them relatively scary in the main game, but the main thing that's terrifying about them in a vanilla run is the stone spell, which many of them spawn with, and it can be really annoying to deal with, or even a complete death sentence in the context of a solo run, as I found out in the last video I did. But in the context of the tournament, I ruled against the stone being allowed, the same as I did for the Shadow Shot, which some Gorgons actually have in the base game as well, and it's often scarier on Gorgons due to their higher magic stat, but again that's not relevant here. The Gwilgi also got 6 points, which is mostly due to its insane speed stat of 22 and great hit rates from its 23 skill. The Gwilgi is kind of modelled on a Swordmaster with the same might weapons as swords, and the class having similar stats to a Swordmaster too, so in the tournament it was relying on doubling and dodge tanking to win. This worked for a lot of the matchups. It only lost both battles against the Cyclops, as it couldn't keep dodging long enough to fully wear away at its massive HP pool. The Bale, Melduin, Deathgoyle and Gorgon all managed to take half a point away from the Gwilgi in the same way, managing to hit it twice before it could finish them off, but the Gwilgi still got a win in one of the battles against all of them when the dodges lined up better for it. This was definitely the most entertaining class to watch compete, as every matchup could be a win for the Gwilgi, and I was just along for the ride, cheering at the dodges and groaning when the underdog got beaten. So this was the class I felt most attached to in the testing for sure. And now in 2nd place, beating those classes by half a point with a score of 6.5, we have the Elder Bale. Once again, the only class it lost both battles against was the Cyclops, and it dropped half a point attacking second against the Archmogul, Gwilgi and Gorgon. The Elder Bale is a very beefy class with high attack and defense and an absurd health pool of 59. Its speed though is on the lower end, and I did expect the lower speed to result in more losses, but in most cases the classes either weren't quite fast enough to double, or even with doubling they just couldn't whittle the Bale's health down quick enough. The Gwilgi did manage to get half a point off the Bale by dodge tanking until it chipped it down, and the glass cannon magical classes, the Archmogul and the Gorgon both managed to do huge damage to the Bale when they were attacking first, but honestly this class had a fantastic performance and really didn't have a ton of weaknesses to hold it back. The only significant impression the Bale has in the main game is the Bale in chapter 6 that's trying to eat the civilians in the fog. It is a bit of a meme really, and it is a shame that the Elder Bale came so close to winning the tournament but didn't quite get the top spot and the child kill reward at the end, but not all dreams come true, I guess. Which means that in first place out of the 10 classes with a score of 8.5 we have the Cyclops. This score was a significant bump up from second place. There was a very big difference in performance between the Cyclops and the next best classes. He really did dominate the competition. The Cyclops embodies everything the Elder Bale does with similar strengths and weaknesses, but just pushes those strengths even further. The damage output of a Silver Axe Cyclops is huge thanks to the high might of axes and that 17 strength, and the health pool is absolutely monstrous at 70 HP, which paired with a godly defense stat of 23 means it is very challenging for any of the classes to have a hope against him. In the entire tournament he only dropped a single half point to the Archmogul, and that was just because the Mogul pulled that clutch crit in one of the battles to one-shot the Cyclops in probably the biggest upset of the tournament. If it weren't for that crit it would have been a full sweep for the Cyclops and he would have gotten the full 9 points that were available, but either way he was still the obvious winner out of these classes. Interestingly, in the main game I think the Cyclopses aren't actually very threatening. They're absolutely bulky. It takes a bunch of hits to kill them unless you're using legendary weapons or a bishop with Slayer, but because they don't start appearing until the end game where your units have grown into such insane balls of stats with really high avoid, you aren't actually that likely to get hit by a Cyclops, especially since you can utilize terrain and weapon triangle really easily to drop their hit rates to a non-threatening level. It's a shame they get a bad representation in the vanilla game, since in a vacuum you can see just how strong they are, and it would have been nice to see their true strength in the campaign itself. But despite their dominance in this tournament, they are actually eclipsed by another class. There is technically an 11th monster class that still appears as a generic, and that is the Draco Zombie. This is a very strange class as they only appear as generics a couple of times in the final chapter of the game, and they only appear with one weapon, the Wretched Heir, which completely ignores resistance and gives insane stat boosts with plus 10 strength, plus 10 skill, plus 20 defense, and plus 10 resistance. And I honestly don't know how to feel about this weapon in the context of the tournament, which is why I left them out of the tournament scoring up till this point. You can see on screen how the Draco Zombie does when pitted against the other 10 classes. He absolutely dominates them. It's not even a contest. He wins every single matchup without a challenge. However, this is mostly just down to the insane weapon they have. So the end result of this video is going to be the first tournament I've done where I declare 2 winners, purely because the Draco Zombie is the undisputed strongest class, but I don't know whether it's fair to let them compete when their weapon gives them such an insane advantage. I personally don't feel it is, since I ruled against weapons like Stone and Shadow Shot, so I think the Cyclops deserves the win myself. But please give me your opinions on this in the comments, whether you think it's fair for the Draco Zombie to be crowned the winner or whether the Cyclops is the winner in your eyes. For the sake of this video though, I will crown both of them to cover my bases, and in true BAFE tournament fashion, I shall give both of them a child to kill as their reward. So here is the Cyclops. Nice. And now the Draco Zombie. Beautiful. And so there we are. Those are the results all wrapped up. Did you correctly predict the winners of the tournament, or did you think another class would have gotten the win? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you made it this far, please show the video some love. And if you are new to the channel, please consider joining our community to see more Fire Emblem content like this. I'll leave a link here to the Sacred Stones Hector solo run video I released recently. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy that one too. As always, I have to give a big thank you to my supporters on Patreon for helping to make this video possible, especially my lords Sonic the Hedgehog, Pathavo, Dark Jaden, and Cowboy Bebop, and even more especially my Manakete, Scott's Gaming World, Shadow Eclipse, Chai Tiefling, Naui Alamode, and Zillow. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. For the Entombs, that was the Fetid Claw. For the Archmogul, it was the Crimson Eye. The Gorgon got a Seaman Surge.